Cells, in the customary way of the being exioehari, or sperm, formed in them. But of course, no sensible result at all is ever obtained from this abstinence of theirs. And it is not obtained because the thought has ceased even to enter their heads of these unfortunate contemporary monks, that although it is indeed possible by means of these substances exioehari formed in them to perfect themselves, yet this can proceed exclusively only if the second and third being foods are intentionally absorbed and consciously digested in one's presence. And this is possible exclusively only if all the parts of one's presence have been accustomed beforehand consciously to fulfill both sacred being particadog duties, that is, to fulfill conscious labors and intentional sufferings. It is, however, unjust to say that no sensible result at all is obtained among these monks there. There are even obtained among them sensible results of two independent kinds. So that you may understand why these mentioned two independent kinds of results are obtained among the contemporary abstaining monks, I must repeat to you once again that according to the fundamental cosmic sacred law of Heptaparaparshanach, if everything in general existing in our megalocosmos, the great as well as the small, does not receive in the process of evolution at the time of its passing through both midnel inns of the sacred Heptaparaparshanach, corresponding foreign help coming from outside, then it begins to evolve back to those definite states from which it began its evolution. The same, of course, proceeds with the definite cosmic substances which are formed in the presences of these same terrestrial abstaining monks. And so, my boy, in consequence of the fact that these terrestrial monks, particularly the contemporary, do not intentionally aid the further evolution of these substances inevitably formed in them from the constant use of the first being food, that is, do not actualize any being particadog duty at all in their common presences, either intentionally or even automatically, and at the same time they do not remove these substances from themselves in the normal way foredesigned by nature, then these substances begin to involve in themselves, and during this involution of being exioehari or sperm, there is worked out among the many transient definite substances which are in general formed in their common presences by such an involutionary process, a definite transient substance which has the property of having two kinds of action on the general functioning of the planetary body of a being. The first kind of action of this definite substance consists in this, that it promotes the depositing of superfluous, what is called karatsiag, or as they call it there, fat. And its second kind of action promotes the arising and dispersing over the whole of the planetary body of what are called poisoniu noskirian vibrations. The consequence of all this is that in the first case, these terrestrial abstaining monks become extraordinarily, as it is usually said there, fat. And sometimes one indeed meets among these fat monks specimens with such an abundant deposit of fat that they would give many points to that form of being there which they expressly fatten in order to increase this same fat in their planetary bodies. And this form of being they call their pig. And in the second case, on the contrary, these abstaining monks become, as it is usually said there, meager thin. And the action of the poisoniu noskirian vibrations which penetrate through them is chiefly evident in their general psyche, which becomes sharply dual, and the manifestations of which are divided into two diametrically opposite kinds, the outer visible and for show, sensed by everyone around them, and the inner and hidden, which the ordinary beings there, especially the contemporary, are entirely incapable of ascertaining or perceiving. Namely, in their outer visible manifestations, these Poisoniou Noskirian monks appear to be what your favorites would express as bigots of a high degree, and in their inner hidden manifestations not shown to others, what your favorites would call expert cynics, also of a high degree. As regards the causes why Poisoniou Noskirian vibrations are obtained among certain of the abstaining monks from the involutionary process of the Exioihari, instead of the deposit of fat, there exists one very detailed theory about this, worked out by certain, as they are called, Catholic monks, who several centuries ago proved in great detail that this proceeds because in the first year of their existence these same thin monks very zealously occupied themselves with that occupation from which pimples, known even to medicine there, generally appear on the faces of young beings there. For a full representation and understanding concerning the significance of this kind of abstinence among contemporary monks there, it remains for me to add that of which I became convinced during my last sojourn there among them, and namely, that already, thanks only to the consequences flowing from the involutionary process of the Exioihari, the fixation of various consequences of the properties of the organ Kundabuffer in the common presences of these unfortunate terrestrial abstaining monks has become greatly facilitated and has, in consequence, increased. At this point in his narrative, Beelzebub was interrupted by a ship's servant, who gave him a Laito Chanbros, which he put to his ear and began to listen to its contents.